Hello and welcome to another show of the Prime Premier League podcast with myself and Big Dr. Ketspire. How are you, mate?
What's happening, mate? Hope you're well.
You good?
Yeah, all good. Thank you, yourself. Hope you enjoyed the weekend of football. Quite a lot to talk about tonight.
I wouldn't say I enjoyed it, mate, but yeah, there was some interesting games, put it that way. Um, let's crack on straight into it, mate. North London derby, Spurs v Arsenal. What did you make of that one, mate? Was it Spurs played well? Arsenal, what do you make of it?
It's not the traditional North London derby that we normally anticipate. It wasn't a game where I don't think I've spoken to anyone that actually enjoyed the game itself, if I'm totally honest. I can't quite put my finger on which way I see it. Like, was it a very professional Arsenal performance? Were Spurs under par? I just don't know. But the one thing I do know is the result was what mattered for Arsenal, especially with the predicament they found themselves in with like the middle of their park missing. Um, I think they had everything to lose and nothing to gain, really. But they obviously got the job done, which I did anticipate that they would get the win. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much to talk about in this one, really, apart from the result itself. What about yourself? What was your take on it?
I actually thought Spurs were the better side for 90 minutes. I just felt they just didn't have that person to stick the ball in the back of the net, mate, if I'm honest. Thought Madison was his usual self, wasn't very good, was pulled off pretty quickly. Um, and I just think they've wasted a lot of money on Solanke, mate. He still doesn't strike me as a Tottenham striker. And I know everyone goes on about it, but he just, I don't know, there's something about him I just don't think he's going to fit in that squad as well as what people think. And it's a lot of money to waste, especially for a club like Tottenham that don't really spend that sort of money. But on the other hand, you could say it was a professional performance by Arsenal. Obviously, missing their two key midfielders and still come away with 3 points. Listening to Spurs fans on Talksport and Darren Bent and Ange's got to go and all this, I think it's coming back to bite him, mate. He might do it in the Scottish League and in them other dodgy leagues that he's managed in, but Premier League's a totally different kettle of fish, isn't it?
I was going to bring, I was going to bring something up with regards to Ange because I had an interesting conversation with a fellow Spurs mutual friend of ours earlier on, and I respect Ange with regards to what he's done in management before, and I actually like him as a guy. And I would love nothing more than for Ange to be successful. But my biggest issue with not just Ange, but with a couple of the other managers that we've seen, they feel like they can come to the best league in the world with a philosophy that's going to work and they're going to stick to their guns and they're not going to make no changes and it's my way or the highway. And as a man, I respect that because you live by the swords, you die by the swords. But the reality is, can you not see what we all see? It's not working. The philosophy it's not going to be one that's going to get you success in the Premier League. Now, would it get you a cup run? Yeah, possibly when you play some of the weaker teams. But to compete in the Premier League over a 38 game window, is it going to be enough? No. You're being found out like quite a lot now. And I just feel like it's time for Ange to, I don't want to use the word swallow his pride, but maybe do something for the greater of the club and ultimately which will keep him in a job. And, they're screaming out to go free at the back. With the way that they want to play, they are screaming out to go free at the back. They've got three centre backs that can do it as well. I just think that he's got nothing to lose. He needs to really, really give it a fall and really change his ways a little bit. I mean, I think that this stubbornness could ultimately cost him his job if he's not careful.
Doc, do you think, though, that Ange has got the side there to play the way that he wants to play this free flowing attacking football? Because I don't think he's got them sort of players at his disposal. And when I think what let Spurs down is their centre midfield. I just don't think they've got that player there that will get on the ball and spray it. Do you know what I mean? Do you know, like a Steven Gerrard, say to speak? They haven't got that sort of player that can get on the ball and just knock it around.
Mm, maybe not, but then that being said, if you want to play a style of play and you know you haven't got the players to do it, then common sense is change your style of play because you're answering your own questions, aren't you? Really, like as a manager, We all want things that we haven't got, so we can only work with what we got. And if we haven't got that sort of player that can do it, then we need to accept that and find a formation that works for the players that you have got. I mean, the other question is, why hasn't he got the players that he wants? He's been there long enough now. That he even needs to put his foot down and show his stance with regards to, I can't do what I want to do. I need this and this. But the reality is you've just gone and spent 65 million on Solanke. He's supposed to have been the thing that was missing there. So, I just don't buy into all of this. Like, oh well, we haven't got the players that we want and everything else. This is an Ange team. This is one that he's taken over. He's been backed financially. I think it's on him. I generally do. And like I said, if he hasn't got that, then pack the midfield out and change your philosophy. But don't stick to your guns because it's just going to cost you your job one way or another because the fans will turn on him. And when the fans turn on him, eventually Levy will give in.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And I think he'll walk before he's pushed anyway. But moving over to Arsenal, did you think it was an Arteta mastermind?
No, I do not. And this theory is really driving me crazy. People are talking like Arteta is this Harry Potter wizard that's miraculously turned up and is pulling rabbits out of the hat. Desperate times call for desperate measures. We've just spoken about like with Ange and not having the players that he might want. Arteta didn't have the players that he wanted. He had a certain squad at his disposal, and he ultimately went out and done a professional job for a one-off game. A one-off game that they didn't dominate. Let's be real. They didn't dominate the game. It wasn't like it was a foregone conclusion that they should have won the game. I think Saka was pretty poor. I think, in a big game, we hear a lot from Arsenal fans about Saka. I think Saka went missing. And I think in a game like that, he really did need to step up and try and take the burden away. I don't think he done that. And I think 3 points is a Brucey bonus. If they would have walked away with a draw, I think that they would have had to have accepted that one. But, like I said, they got the 3 points. That was the be all and end all. But all this masterclass talk, no, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
I think, obviously, we spoke to a few Arsenal fans last week on TikTok, and like they were talking about Saka being in this captaincy group and all that. I was quite surprised to see Jorginho with the armband. Was you? They've just brought him into the side and he's been given the armband straight away.
I think it just says everything that I've said all along with Arsenal fans, that you don't have leaders at the club. You might think you have, but you haven't. And, there isn't the trust there. These players that you think are in this group and everything else, well, they're not even putting in like captain's performances without the armband. So you don't want to be giving them the responsibility of the armband as well. Like I said, I mean, that's one of the worst games I've seen Saka have in a while.
Yeah,
that looked like the Saka that we see in an England shirt, not a Saka we see in an Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it shows you how depleted their squad is when they're bringing on a 16-year-old for the last 5 minutes of the game to sort of see it out. And just, I think Arsenal...
we've got man of the match, don't you?
Gabriel Jesus, if you look at Sky.
Well, the one I see, Trossard was man of the match.
Yeah, Sky gave it to Gabriel, but it's because he scored. But even Trossard, I don't think he was that great, mate, to be honest. I don't think any of them were that great.
But this is the Trossard where a lot of the Arsenal fan base are sort of stating that, he's not quite good enough anymore, and they see him being replaced with Martinelli on one wing and now maybe with the arrival of Sterling. To me personally, I really rate Trossard. I think he's a great player, as in he never lets them down. I liked him at Brighton, funny enough, even though I'm not a big fan of Brighton. I don't think he should have gone to Arsenal personally. I think that for this reason, that regardless of what he does, he's never going to get the credit that he deserves. Whereas if he went to like a Newcastle, I think they'd idolise him there. So it's an interesting one.
I think he scores important goals. I can't see how Arsenal can let him go, to be honest with you. He's one of them, he can come off the bench. He's a bit like John Duran, isn't he? But it is what it is. Moving on, swiftly moving on, mate. Forest claim all 3 points at Anfield, which sees Arne Slot lose his first game in charge. Not only lose his first game, but concede his first goals as well. What did you make of that game, mate, and that performance?
Um, well, I mean, you can dress it up wherever you want, but at the end of the day, a 1-0 loss at Anfield to a Forest, that's not one that that Liverpool fans should be, wearing and taking on the chin. You'd understand if it was one of the bigger clubs. This is Nottingham Forest. The fact that they've gone there, won the game, kept a clean sheet, especially after all the hype with Slot. I mean, I think like the saying goes, the honeymoon period is well and truly over. It'd be very, very interesting to see what happens now because I foresee this and I've predicted this all along. I think Arnie Slot will get found out, and I think this Liverpool team will get found out. And ultimately, 4 games in now, we've gone from 3 games in when the fan base is swinging from the like chandeliers, talking like Slot is a better manager than Klopp, and this is a better team than what it was under Klopp. Well, one thing I can assure you, Klopp don't lose that game, so it'll be an interesting one. Let's see. Let's see how he responds from this. Let's see how they respond from this. One thing I can assure you, there's going to be a lot of teams looking at that one thinking, well, if they can do it, so can we. So it'd be an interesting one.
I did hear you
What was
say
your
earlier.
take?
I did hear you say earlier that Forest could be the surprise package of the sort of the league. Just stick by that, or you sort of thought about it and changed your mind.
The reason why I said that is because I didn't have much faith in Forest. I'm talking about the Forest of previous years. The one that's under Cooper, for argument's sake, the money that they've spent and they've not really progressed. But the one thing I would say is Santos, Nuno is a good manager. He had Wolves playing very, very well in the Premier League. So he does have a style of play that can be successful in the league. All right, it didn't work out at Tottenham. And to me, he's that sort of manager where, in a weird type of way, Tottenham was too big of a job for them. But let's be honest, most managers struggle at Tottenham anyway. So I don't think you can hold that against him. But I feel like he's found his level now with Forest, and I feel like he's onto something. And yeah, like I said, beginning of the season, I anticipated that they could potentially be in a relegation battle. I'm not saying that now. No, I'm really not. I think the confidence that they'll get out of this one, I can see them. You know, I mean, they're unbeaten in 4 now, are they not? But, I just think that come Christmas time, they could have enough points on the board where they could potentially be safe already.
Yeah, interesting point. That to be fair, they are unbeaten still. So yeah, interesting season for Forest, I think, and their fans should be excited with what they can deliver, especially after that on Saturday. Moving on to a team that have zilch points is our friends down on the south coast, Southampton. Obviously, been hit for free again over the weekend. Doc, I'm going to ask you a question. It's a serious question, and I thought about it, and I'll give you my answer after. But do you think Southampton could go down with the lowest ever points at this rate?
No, I don't. I did hear you say this earlier, and the answer to that is no. I don't think you'll ever see a team drop down the league with such little points again. I think that's one record that's going to be safe for a while. I still think that Southampton is the type of team that could still potentially get 6 points from Leicester and 6 points from Ipswich on their day. This is a team that competed with both these teams last year. I am starting to backtrack a little bit because I did have Leicester down as rock bottom. Now they haven't had the points deductions, and now they've obviously picking up a couple of points. I'm looking at Southampton, and I think Southampton will finish bottom, but I don't think it will be quite as bad as you think. But I do think it's a long season for Southampton, and signing Ramsdale is not the answer. And I think Ramsdale really has made one of the worst decisions of his career going there personally.
I
Was
actually, I actually think Southampton will go down with the lowest ever points. And the reason I say that is I just can't see where they're going to get any points from. And I know people say, oh, but they looked all right for the first 25 minutes against Man United. Yeah, but they didn't look all right for the other 65 minutes they had to play. Do you know what I mean? I know they missed the penalty. Maybe some people say it's a poor penalty, good save, whatever. You can't dress it up. They haven't got them players there to put the ball in the back of the net. And that's what's going to kill
they've
them.
got Ipswich next, so this is an interesting one because if Ipswich turn them over, then I think it's very worrying signs. But I mean, the problem with Southampton is it's a team that's come up to the Premier League And yes, okay, Ramsdale's a great signing for them with regards to the fact that I don't think they ever thought that they would be able to have the substitute keeper for the team that finished runners-up and England's number 2 in between the sticks. But the reality is, it won't make a blind bit of difference. You know, it won't make a blind bit of difference. It just means that he might save 6 of the 16 shots that they have. But it's not enough, you know. Goalkeepers keep you in games, granted, but when you haven't got the rest of the players there, and when you're exposing that keeper as much as he is, with the quality of the strikers and the midfielders that we've got, they'll just put the ball past him and he won't even be able to react. So it's not like he's going to be making mistakes or making worldy saves. You know, the goals that he's conceding, it wouldn't matter who's in goal. It won't make a blind bit of difference. It's still going
Yeah,
in. So
yeah,
I don't think the goalkeeper's the answer. I think that they needed a hell of a lot more than that, and they just didn't do it.
yeah. We've spoken a lot about Ten Hag on here and sort of his management style. I want to focus a bit around Rashford tonight because obviously he got his first goal of the season on Saturday. Do you think that'll kickstart his season now, and he might not look back to say?
You just never know with Rashford, do you? He's one of these players that's slowly but surely becoming one of the most frustrating English players in the last few years because I am a big Rashford fan. When Rashford's on it and he's playing to his capabilities, I think he can be unplayable at times. But I just don't think he likes Ten Hag. I don't think he likes the style under Ten Hag. I don't think he's happy there. And so I just don't know. I was kind of hoping that this year he'd kick on and we'd get the Rashford back that really we need for England. But I'm still not convinced by it. I still think that Ten Hag will be gone by the end of the season. I still think Man United are going to struggle this year. Um, yeah, they beat Southampton. Like, well done, like fair play. But you know, it'd be interesting to see what happens at the weekend because they've got my mob. So be an interesting one. Like, you know, is this the Man United that turn up and put on a show and beat Crystal Palace convincingly, like they should, or is this the Man United of last season that turns up and gets turned over twice? We shall see.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of your mob, salvage a point at home, mate. 2-0 down to a Leicester City side that was not very good. And what I mean by not very good is the previous 3 games they weren't very good. And you managed to salvage a point at home. What did you make of your performance, mate?
I mean, first and foremost, the word salvage is a bit far fetched. Obviously, you know, we got a late goal, which was the equaliser, but I think we were the better team over the 90 minutes. I think they caught us out once on a counter attack, which shouldn't have happened, but it did. Then we obviously, in quite Crystal Palace tradition lately, we just seemed to start the second half slow, and we got caught out with a mistake at the back. But again, you know, we then went up the other end and scored within 40 seconds of that. Um, what I like about Palace under Glasner is he doesn't panic. He does not panic at all. He's still out there. He's not irate. He's not throwing his hands around. He's out there instructing the team, gets them going, and we go again. And you know, I think it would have been like it would have been very unjust if we didn't get a point out of the game, especially with a couple of the other games this season. So, was it 2 points dropped? Yes. In my opinion, it was 2 points dropped. Like, I think that you really need to be winning your home games. But ultimately, unbeaten in the last 2. We got the new signings coming in. I'm not concerned by it at all. I still think we'll get it right. I just think we haven't quite hit the races yet. It hasn't quite clicked. But one win and the results go our way, we're up to 10th or 11th. So it is what it is. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's ideal, but I'm really not worried about it, to be honest.
I think a good thing for Palace as well is that Mateta obviously got on the score sheet twice. I know one of them was a penalty, but he still has to pull it in the back of the net from 12 yards. But he's back on the score sheet. Do you know what I mean? His season's up and running now because obviously I've watched him this year and against West Ham. He just didn't look there at the races, and you sort of think to yourself, what's he actually going to do? But he's back on the score sheet, and it's got to be a positive from a Palace
I think he
perspective.
was tired. I generally think he was tired in the first couple of games. I've told you this beforehand. I wouldn't have even started him. I wouldn't have started him against Brentford first game after the Olympics. I mean, I would have tried to bring him back into the West Ham game after having a week's rest, and then I think you'd have seen a bit more of him. But I do generally think he looked tired, and I think the international break for Mateta in particular come at a good time. Yeah, I mean, Mateta will score you goals. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. So we've just got to keep creating the chances and trust the process. That's 4 goals in his last 2 games.
Yeah, good
No, it's
return.
not. No, it's not. The Chelsea game, the
No, he's scored
Chelsea
that.
game, the Chelsea game come after the Norwich game. But yeah, ultimately he scored 4 goals this season now in 5 games. So it's not too bad, is it? When you look at it like that.
No, it's decent. Another poor first half performance by West Ham. Managed to salvage a point away at Fulham the weekend. Last minute equaliser. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
What did you think? Before I give my opinion.
I don't think nothing's changed. I think it's the same conversation that we've had the last 3-4 weeks, and I think it's the same conversation. All this transfer business and stuff. I don't think nothing's changed yet. I don't think you look like you've changed your style or anything. I generally don't think nothing's changed. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at this West Ham now, and I'm looking at your predictions of top 6, and I'm thinking, I'm very, very looking forward to your forfeit you're going to be doing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well, mate. To be fair, I thought first half we were absolute shocking, and not only did I think we were shocking, I thought Lopetegui got his team completely wrong. Absolute completely wrong. He went there to sit with 3 midfielders in Suchet, Alvarez, and Rodriguez, and it just didn't work. If I say Fulham could have been 3-4 up at half time, I'm not lying. Do you know what I mean? It was just
The
like
one thing I
attack.
would say about Fulham, no, the one thing I would say about Fulham is it's nice to see Smith Rowe enjoying his football again and actually showing people what he's all about. So, like, that is one thing I would say. And like I said, when we were linked with him, we all know what a player he is. We all know what he's capable of doing. We all know how he can influence a game of football, especially at a much smaller club than like an Arsenal. But it's keeping him fit, and at the moment they're doing that. So, long may it continue for Smith Rowe as a footballer and an Englishman. But yeah, it just goes to show that you bring in a little bit of quality, and it does show. So I think he really has stepped into that role, and losing Paulinho was a big loss, but I think Smith Rowe has really, softened that blow. So
Yeah, it was like
what's happening, Ashley? Right, mate?
it was like attack first defence in the first half, and it could have been 3-4-0 to Fulham. However, he makes the 2 important changes at half time that he should have started with. And Ash, I will answer your question in a minute. He brought on Paqueta at half time for Soucek, and he took Antonio off at half time for Somerville. And he pushed Bowen down the middle, moved Kudos to his natural position on right wing, and played Somerville. And then we looked like a totally different side. And I wouldn't say we were better than Fulham. At times we were. But what I would say is we look more attacking than we ever did and we ever have this season. And for me, that's what's holding me at the moment is we can do it. It's just when are we going to do it? And I'm hoping we do it Saturday, when we play Chelsea.
He's just got to stop tinkering. He's got to stop tinkering, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I,
yeah.
I do appreciate his early days and he's learning. And obviously, again, with the international break, it's probably come at a bad time for him as a manager because he's trying to learn. But ultimately, he's got to literally make his bed and lie in it. He's got to pick his best 11, and if he does that and you get beat, fair enough. But this was the thing that I was concerned with West Ham, with the amount of signings that you made, was when you was talking to me about top 6, I thought to myself, by the time you've got these players gelled into this team, your top 6 dreams could be long gone. And if you're not careful, that could be a reality. So, we'll see. But I mean, at the end of the day, what's that? Is that 4 points now? 5 points you're on?
4 points. Yeah.
4. So yeah, 4 points from 4 games. It's not doom and gloom. I just don't think his grass is greener than what it was.
I think the way you got to look at it, I think West Ham have had one of the toughest starts in the league. Villa at home, tough, just qualified for Champions League, buzzing. Palace away. Palace towards the second half of the season last year were decent, very good. So it was a tough place to go. City at home, well, you know what that brings. And then you're going to a Craven Cottage, which is never easy to go and play. But Ash, yeah, I do think some of his football is very much Moyes in disguise, and not a lot has changed. However, I do think the second half on Saturday we did see a glimpse of what we could do, and hopefully he'll start Todibo and Somerville on Saturday. He goes on to say Lukic looks decent. He looked all right. I thought he should have been sent off, to be fair, but he looked all right. And Big T's in the house. I know he's away in Snowdonia at the minute, but yeah, Big T's in the house. So thanks for joining. So, Doc, that leads me nicely on to Newcastle, come from behind against a Wolves with a lackluster performance. Newcastle just seem to be bringing out or grinding out these results. I think they're unbeaten and they're sitting third in the league at the moment. And we heard a Newcastle fan earlier say that if it was Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, we'd be all raving about it because they're grinding out results. That's what champions do. What do you make of this Newcastle team with Tonali coming back and sort of their performances?
I think first and foremost, let's give them a bit of props. So exactly like what you've just said, and exactly the point that was proven, that for a team like Newcastle to be sitting where they are, they should be over the moon with that. Let's be honest. With the point return that they've got, they should be over the moon with that. So props to them for doing that, and props to them for being able to grind out the results. The thing that's concerning for me is why are Newcastle not firing on cylinders? Like, it's not like they've not got their full team. So that's the biggest question for me. I mean, has Isaac started the season yet, or does he not realise that the Premier League started? This guy that was being raved about. I've seen nothing of him this season at all. Absolutely nothing. He doesn't look like the same player. I think Tomori coming back is a big plus because I think he gets some playing. But yeah, like I said, I understand this theory of we're in second gear, but I don't buy that. I don't buy that this is your second gear and you've got 3 more gears you can go up. I look at it the other way, that there's teams competing with you like Wolves, who I think is going to be in trouble. That again was in the game for most of it. I don't think it's good enough. Now you can look at things 2 ways: half empty, half full. That's the way it is. But I think the points is covering up the performances, and for me, the performances are concerning. And I think if Newcastle play this way against the big teams, then I think they'll lose points.
Yeah, I think with Isaac, what's disappointing is he's just come off the last international break with 3-2 for Sweden, and he just can't. He's just not hitting that ground running at the minute. And Tonali must be like a new signing. He's been out for 12 months, 13 months. But do you think it's that they've not added to that squad very well in the summer? But do you think they should have added to that squad?
100%, 100% think that they should have added to that squad. I think that squad in particular, for them to kick on, they needed to add strength and depth. So for me personally, that is going to be their downfall. I think they're 1 or 2 injuries away from having an average team. And again, like I said, I don't think they're good enough where they're going to be able to grind out results every single week. So their performances need to improve, and they need to improve fast. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle, they'll still be thereabouts with a European spot, but I think top 4 on that, I can't see it.
Yeah. What did you make of Wolves, mate? I know they had a lot of the game. Pope made a great save in the dying minutes. Are you concerned for Gary O'Neill and Wolves at the minute, or do you think they'll have enough to stay in the division?
I think they'll have enough to stay in the division because I think that there is some teams that are worse than them. But I think it's going to be a long season for Wolves, and they need to up their game a little bit if they want to stay in the league. But I think Wolves will ultimately be in a relegation battle. I think come the end, they'll be thereabouts. And I think that it will go down to the wire with them. I do like their new striker, but again, it's just, is it that he's not getting the rub of the green? Because he's making the right chances and he's creating chances, but he's not taking them. But it's not even that for me. Wolves at the back look shambles. I think the fact that you've obviously gone and took one of their experienced centre back, they just look a shambles at the back. And I just think any team in that league can score against Wolves. I'd be very, very surprised if Wolves keep clean sheets this year.
Yeah,
So,
when you look and see Chelsea,
scoring power.
when you look and see Chelsea put 6 past them, it says everything you need to know about their defence, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, but that could have been 10.
Yeah. Moving on, mate. A missed penalty cost Bournemouth a point. They played Chelsea. What did you make of that game, mate? Do you think Sancho changed the game at half time for Chelsea? I will admit, and I'll be totally honest with you, the game actually made me go to sleep. It sent me to sleep. So I couldn't tell you what happened from 50-minute onwards. But do you think that sort of Sancho changed that game from?
So I was out. I was out for the game. We had the game on, but it was quite a bit noisy, so we couldn't hear anything. We was just watching with our eyes. But I was watching it with a Chelsea fan, and I don't really think I could sit here and say whether it was Sancho or not. I think the penalty save was the turning point. Ultimately, I think the same with the Man United game. I think both them goalkeepers changed the game with the penalty saves. I think they were both very good penalty stops as well, may I add. And I think that really did cost Bournemouth momentum. And I think it gives Chelsea a little bit of confidence. But yeah, one thing I would say is the Chelsea fan who was watching the game with me was not convinced with Chelsea at all. He actually said that they were quite poor. He said that he thought Bournemouth were a better team, and he was over the moon to walk away with the 3 points. So I think that sort of says all you need to say on that one, really.
Yeah, as I say, it sent me to sleep, mate. That's how boring that game was. 5 o'clock on a Saturday evening.
Wolves have got enough to stay up.
I think for Wolves this year, there's 3 worse teams than them, and I think it'll come down to whoever scores the most goals out of them all. I do think they've got enough. I do, from what I've seen. I just don't know. I look at Ipswich and I see them going to get a point down at Brighton. Do you know what I mean? And that's not an easy place to go and get a point, is it? And
see, the thing that I'm worried about for Wolves is, as we know, managers of Wolves, War manager in particular, has walked recently because of the fact that he knows that the financial mess that Wolves are in. Everyone knows with the financial fair play. Gary O'Neill's openly talked about it. He knew what he was getting himself in for, but he knew ultimately that the club was going to sell their best assets and they wasn't going to invest that money back into the team. Yes, he's been getting a little bit of drips and drabs, but I don't see where the improvement's going to come. Even if they stay up, unless there's a cash injection somewhere, I just feel like they've gone really, really backwards over the years. I think that all of their good players, the ones that made Wolves the success, the ones that, like I said earlier, under Nuno that was performing, they've all seemed to moved on to bigger and better things. And I think Wolves have just deteriorated bad. And, I just think that you can't keep relying on being better than the teams that come up. Do you know what I mean? Because at some point that's going to bite you on the bum. So
I think they've been massively undercutting prices as well. Like you look at that, what was it, Ruben Neves? Like I reckon they could have stuck 100 mil on his head, and they just didn't. Do you know what I mean? I think he went for stupid money, like peanuts. Do you know what I mean? And you look at when Rice is going for 100 million.
Johnson to Liverpool.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like you can. There's something going on at Wolves that just ain't right. And I think whatever happens in this spell with Wolves, no Wolves fan can say Gary O'Neill walked away because he knows what's going on at the club. He's been told and he's sticking with it. And that's a testament to his character and beliefs in the squad of players that he's got there, I believe. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I just feel sorry for him. I just generally feel sorry for him because I think out of all of the clubs, like, he's trying to compete in the hardest league and he's not getting any help doing that. And if he manages to do that, it's all because of the credit to him and nothing else. I don't think the club deserve the success because as a club collectively they've let themselves down. They've really dropped off. And if Gary O'Neill walked tomorrow, who could blame him?
No one, no one, no one, mate. And they've developed that ground as well. So it just makes me wonder if they've got in a bit of debt and they're just financially, as you say, they need either a buyer to come in and buy the club or a massive cash injection. But where that's coming from, I do not know. Moving on to our last point, mate. Everton stopped playing at 2-0 up, get beat again 3-2 at Villa Park. I've got two questions for you in one here. One, Everton have been 2-0 up in the last 2 weeks and thrown it away. And two, have we seen the goal of the season from John Duran?
So question one, let's focus on Everton for a sec and then I'll come on to Villa. The only positive that you can have from an Everton fan's perspective is the fact that they're still scoring goals. Other than that, there's no other positive you can have as an Evertonian. There's nothing positive about the club, the pickle that they're in. They're no nearer to to finding a buyer. Obviously, Texler from Palace have been heavily linked with taking over at Everton. He's now, if you believe the rumours today, that he's asked Jay-Z to come in with him and buy Everton. Him and Jay-Z. If you want Jay-Z running your club, cool story. Enjoy yourselves. Maybe you can do some songs at half time. I don't know, but personally speaking, if you're a club in a mess, is Jay-Z the answer? I don't think so, mate. Unless he's going to sell some concert tickets at the new ground and raise some money, maybe. I just don't know. But I just think Everton is becoming a laughing stock, a real laughing stock. And again, it's another club where their good players are going. They've done very, very well to keep Brownway. And how they've managed to keep hold of the England #1 for as long as they have is beyond me. But if these players start going, which will be the next ones to go because of the financial pickle that they're in, if they don't get a cash injection, then again, who's going to go to Everton? Not quality players, You've seen Onana go from Everton to Villa. It's gone from strength to strength. Yeah, Everton's that team in it where they always find a way. So I still refuse to say they'll go down, but everyone's luck runs out eventually, and it could well be this season where their luck runs out if they're not careful.
Doc, their luck's been over the last 32 years, mate. It's got to run out sooner or later, and I think this year's the year, mate. They look absolutely abysmal. Ash has put first half missed it, but they were sharp even when Duran scored. Calvert-Lewin was not clinical with his chance. One thing I will say about Calvert-Lewin and Doc, I wanted to get your opinion on this. Do you think he's a good striker? Do you think, with Man United looking at him in the summer of 40 million, do you think he's worth that sort of money? What has he done to sort of make you stand out other than the time when Darren Ferguson was there? Not Darren Ferguson, Duncan Ferguson.
I like Calvert-Lewin as a finisher, as a finisher, and I think he can do a job. But, and here's the but, when I was talking about Chelsea or Newcastle or Man United picking him up, and I even sort of suggested that West Ham to a degree, it's not to be the main man, and it's not to be the one that's going to score all the goals. It's someone that could bring a bit of experience and play a part. And I think that's the difference. Everton are dependent on him, reliant on him like the main man. And I don't think he's a main man quality player in the Premier League. But I do like him and I do think he's good. I mean, 40 million, absolutely not. But I suppose he's English, and in this day and age, I think, all you need is two legs and you're worth like 40, 50 mil, aren't you? So, ultimately, maybe that's fair. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I do worry for Everton. I do fear for Everton. Sorry, this season. I think that this could be the season. If they're not careful, they could drop away. And I'll tell you something else about Everton. The one thing I would say is, if they go down, if they do get relegated, not only would it be a team that's never been relegated before being relegated for the first time from the Premier League, right? it could spell the end of Everton. Literally, generally believe it could spell the end of Everton because they'll have a big ground that they'll struggle to fill. They won't be able to bring the players in once the parachute payments are gone. I don't see Everton Football Club coming straight back up unless something drastically changed. I think all of their good players would go, and it could be catastrophic for Everton. So they want to hope for their sake that they manage to stay up. But again, the one thing I will say about Everton Football Club, I have no sympathy for you, Everton. All you Evertonians out there, I have no sympathy for you. And the only reason why I have no sympathy for you is you're the only club I know that generally thinks that you can pay for two grounds at the same time and you don't understand how football works. You know, there's no other club that's been able to do it. You normally have to sell your ground to a property developer, take the money and invest that money into the new ground, or ultimately build on that ground. But to build another ground and fund that while funding your ground and adhering to FFP rules, you are playing with fire. And we all know what happens when you play with fire. You get burnt.
Yeah. Ash says, and Dye looks sharp. I think they will get in, I should say, fire in with Calvert Lewin, and they'll be okay scoring goals. I think they've got to get him in the team first. And yeah, just, I Doc, we spoke about it last week, and not on the show, obviously, but we spoke about it personally. Do you think Sean Dyche goes and David Moyes gets brought in? And do you think it's a good move?
I think if Deitch goes, Everton get relegated.
Even with a Moyes there?
Even with a Moyes there. I think if you were going into a relegation battle and if you're Everton Football Club and you are fighting for your life, you want a Deitch, you don't want a Moyes. So I think that ultimately, again, if they do that, that could be their downfall. By all means, let Deitch keep him up, let him stay and let him keep him up. And then if you want to move him on and bring Moyes in because you think that that's a good idea to do, like West Ham done, fine. But to stay in the Premier League, you know, he's proven. You need him. You know, you need that. You need that manager that can, that can put that fire in their bellies and give them the shake up when as and when he needs to. So, you know, the chances are he probably will be sacked because football is a funny old game, and the fact that they've backed the manager doesn't mean anything. You know, all this waffle of well, the owners have backed him. Yeah, like we haven't seen that before, have we? When an owner's backed someone and got rid of them a week later,
Yeah.
So that's pinch of salt. But yeah, I think Everton are a better team with Dyche in charge, and I think he's good enough to keep him in the league. And then, like I said, maybe move him on. I don't think Moyes is. Would you trust David Moyes in a relegation battle? You're an ex-West Ham fan. You tell me.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I think Dyche has more experience of it, and obviously did it at Burnley where he didn't have the sort of players he's got now at his disposal. I think what David Moyes would do is rally that crowd, get them fans up for it, get them players up for it, because he's been there. He's done 12 years there. Whether it's a good thing going back, I don't know. It worked at West Ham, but would it work at Everton? I don't know. It'd be interesting. That's what I'd say. It'd be definitely interesting.
I don't think he's got anything to work with at Everton. This is the thing. It's all well and good, like he went back to West Ham. He went back to West Ham and he had things to work with. He still had a Declan Rice. He still had a Mark Noble there. He still had things to work with. He goes back to Everton and he's going back to Everton in a much worse state than when he was there the first time round. And let's not be naive. It took him a while to build the Everton that we knew of. And like I said, going back there, he's not going to recognise the place. Everything that he had there is gone. So
Yeah.
I think it's a completely different kettle of fish. I don't even think Moyes would want to go back. I think it would be a bad move for David Moyes because he's in a lose-lose situation. So I don't think Moyes would even want to go back there at the moment with the mess they're in, if I'm totally honest. I think you've got more chance of seeing a Gareth Southgate take the job because of the fact that he might, see it as in it's a way back into football. But I would be surprised if Moyes even wanted the job.
Whitehead says Moyes is able to sustain a mid-table team and with a platform able to improve their fortunes. As they said, don't go back to your ex. Would be the end of Moyes if he goes back. Doc, there's two questions I want to ask you before we wrap up the show. One, you just said that the Palace owner is looking to buy Everton. Where would that leave Crystal Palace? Would it?
It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference to Crystal Palace. And the reason why I say it doesn't make a blind bit of difference to Crystal Palace, because he can't buy Everton until he's sold his shares in Crystal Palace, which means that our sale goes first. We've got people in charge of our club that run the club regardless of the stake anyway. So we will sanction the deal to suit us. Ultimately, if we don't want the deal to go ahead, it won't go ahead. So it's all on our terms. And whoever invests, like I said, the person that invests in the club will be nothing will change at Crystal Palace. Dougie Freeman's not going anywhere. Parish isn't going anywhere. So it doesn't really make a blind bit difference to Crystal Palace Football Club with regards to whether he stays or whether he doesn't. So, yeah, it's kind of irrelevant. I mean, I want him gone. And the reason why I want him gone is because of the fact that I don't like this concept of him openly trying to buy another football club while he owns our club. But I understand it. He owns other football clubs. He wants control of the club. Now, he come to Crystal Palace and it's a bit stupid because he knew what he was signing up for. And ultimately, I think the problem is I think he thought that he could work with Parish and have more of a say. And I think he thought that him and Parish would agree on certain things. And it's become quite apparent that Parish will do right by Crystal Palace and Textor wants to do something else. And ultimately, he's openly said, you know, he loves Crystal Palace Football Club. He don't have an issue with us, but he wants to go and have control of a football club again where he can do what he sees fit. And that's not going to be at our club.
So he's not the majority shareholder?
Say that again?
He's not the majority shareholder?
What, with us?
Yeah.
He is the majority shareholder.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
Interesting. And my second question is Yuri Timber, the weekend for Arsenal. Is it a record? Tackle on Porro? And then his altercation with
the foul. The foul. The funny thing about it is the foul's probably not a red card, even though it was very similar to the ones that that Jones at Liverpool got sent off for against Spurs last year. But the fact that he's then grabbed someone by the scruff of the neck, he's he could have quite easily seen 2 yellows. But I don't think the tackle is a red. Not for me. I mean, if you'd have seen red, I wouldn't argue with it. Let's be honest. But my first impression when I saw it was, no, that's not red. And and I've seen it a couple more times. He has, he's took the ball, but he has ultimately gone over the ball. It's one of them ones. It is 6 on one and half a dozen the other. Some refs will give it, some refs won't.
Whitehead's a second yellow, yes, but not a red. What I will say to you, Doc, and I want you to put your refereeing cap on now, is with him going over the ball, and I know what VAR said, and I'll say what VAR said in a minute once you've given your interpretation, if you don't mention it, but with him going over the ball and the studs coming down on the player's ankle, is he not endangering the opponent?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because the rules of the game says going over the ball, right? Now, when you say going over the ball that we play with is a round shape. So ultimately, if you hit the top of the ball, have you gone over the ball or have you got the ball? And once you touch the round object, your momentum's going to go forward. So, like I said, it is a very, very fine line when you're talking about going over the ball. Me personally, when someone goes over the ball, is when a tackle goes in higher than the ball, where you're ultimately playing for the round ball. And if if you're over that, then you're not trying to win the ball at all, and then ultimately that's endangering a player. That's the way I interpret the rule. It's one of them ones. At the end of the day, we've seen it time and time again where people win a ball and their follow through takes a player out, and then we say, "But that's a good tackle." If you hit the top of the ball, have you won the ball or haven't you won the ball? And if you're talking about hitting the top of the ball and saying we haven't won the ball, then we're in a crazy world that we live in, right?
And ultimately, that's what VAR said yesterday, is the fact that he didn't follow through is what saved him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to get your interpretation as a referee. I thought it was quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the problem with refereeing P is exactly what you just said. It's every ref's got a different interpretation of the rule, and this is where when they say they want consistency in referees, how can you have consistencies in something where the laws of the game says it's your interpretation as a person? You know,
Yeah.
if I said to you right now, it's quite light out because the moon's out and I can see daylight, you will say to me, well, I think it's quite dark out. You know, it's how you interpret things, and there's no right or wrong answer. So this is the problem when we talk about consistency. You're never going to get consistency unless the law is very transparent with it doesn't matter what you think, this is what you've got to do. And a lot of referees' calls is not in that interpretation, it is your interpretation. You know, you can actually be booked in a game of football for like for using too much force. Well, your interpretation of too much force, my interpretation of too much force, is two different things, you know. And then when you've got VAR involved as well, where there's three people in there, you're now talking about 4 or 5 different people looking at something. You know as well as I do when you talk football, it's very hard to get 5 people to agree on on anything. You know, and that's the beauty of the game, isn't it? We've all got different sort of opinions. That's what makes that game so beautiful. So it's one of them ones. It's a tough one, man.
And do you think that the referee, especially the referee, because he's there in the moment, would have took into consideration two things mainly? A, it's a North London derby, and the emotions are a bit more heightened because of it's a North London derby. And three, the sort of the crowd. Do you know what I mean? Because it's easy to get on the referee's back in it when you're sitting in the stands.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a human being, yes, but I don't like that concept because I'd like to think that again, like I just said, it's your interpretations of a ref. So it shouldn't be based on, well, if it happens to the home team, I've got to give it because of the fans, and if it's a away fan, I don't give it. You know, your interpretation of the ref should be honest and transparent of what you generally believe it to be. But yeah, I do generally think that certain things, you know, can escalate quite quickly when the crowds get on the referee's like case and stuff. So you know, this is why I don't like to criticize refs because it's the hardest job in the world. Um, and like I said, a lot of the time when referees get slagged off by supporters, it's not because the referee's got it wrong. It's because the supporter doesn't understand the interpretation of the decision the ref's got to make. It's a lack of education in this day and age because we used to follow football where football was very transparent and things were very obvious and it wasn't that complicated. But there's so much involved with being a ref now. There's so much you have to take into account. There's so many things where the referee gets to interpret it how he sees fit, and that is the rules. So, you know, you can't criticize in a ref because he interprets something his way. So, you know, he's in a lose-lose situation.
Wicked. Interesting. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, Doc, for your refereeing analysis as well as your football knowledge this evening. I really enjoyed it. And guys, we are back now on a Monday. Sorry we missed last Monday. It was international break, and me and Doc had zero to talk about. But Premier League's back, game week 5 this week, and me and Doc will be back next Monday to review the games. Doc, have a splendid week. Have a splendid week, mate.
And you,
And
sir, I'll
we'll,
catch up with you in due course. And
yeah,
Ash and a few of the others in the chat, thank you for your interaction as always. It is appreciated.
yeah. And that's it from us. Thanks for watching.